today we've got a very, very special guest, everyone. And it is George Pryor. Now, George has spent over 35 years working in technology. George has seen the growth of the internet, the beginnings of the AI boom, and the cloud. And most recently, he has been the CIO of New Rocket. So thank you, George, for joining us today.
Well, Farrah, it's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely no worries at all. And yeah, I hear the humidity levels are pretty crazy where you are right now, right?
It is summertime in the nation's capital, so it wouldn't be anything but a humid, hot summer if it wasn't.
Wow, I love that. Well, in the UK right now, it's grey, it's raining, it's cloudy, but hey, that's British summertime for you. So yeah, absolutely. So look, huge welcome to you. It's a real privilege to talk with you. I know we've spoken before in the past and I've always been so wowed by, who you are as a person, your background, your history, and just how genuine and humble you are as a person. I was completely blown away. So thank you so much. It means so much. And I think, what everybody, wants to know, first of all, is maybe a little bit about how you joined New Rocket, because just so the listeners know, you joined at a very, very exciting time, a really important time in their career. 5 companies merged and rebranded under the name of New Rocket. So could you just tell us a little bit about your time there as CIO?
Absolutely. It has been an amazing journey. New Rocket is I think aptly named because it truly is a rocket ship that is going to the outer edges in what it's doing. It's a great story, actually. You've got a number of very successful ServiceNow companies in both Canada, North America, and then also in India that were put together with the stated objective. And if you go to the website, you'll see to be the premier provider of all things ServiceNow. And I think they're doing a fantastic job in achieving that. It's never easy taking different cultures, taking successful smaller companies and putting them together. M&A, mergers and acquisition, and integrations and change management, if you will, around the people, the processes, the technology, is critical to making sure that you don't lose that special sauce, if you will, that made all of those individual companies successful. And I think New Rocket has done an outstanding job of doing that. And I'm very proud to have been part of that. We had a pretty Herculean task in doing that in literally 4 months. We started in September. We were done at the end of December 2021. And it's been absolutely amazing since then. And the company is headed towards these really, really bright, successful outer reaches, if you will. So tons of fun, tons of work. But as they say, if you don't work hard, it was because it wasn't worth doing. And this was definitely worth doing.
Yeah, that sounds absolutely amazing. And, I can imagine it was really exciting at the time, but I can imagine it's quite difficult as well. I mean, you mentioned about culture, trying to merge 5 individual companies who have their own style and culture and way of working. Like, how did you get to understand each company to make sure that, that it went successfully without, too much hiccups?
Yeah, it's the people, right? At the end of the day, it's the people. This was complicated by the fact this was all done over Zoom, Teams, Zoom, people in different time zones, different geographical areas. And yes, for your listeners, Canadians and folks in the US, they are different. We are different. They say things differently, but it's, again, the thing to remember is focus on the objective, the goal of what we were trying to achieve and what we did achieve and what was built, and how each individual can be part of that journey and be part of succeeding in that goal. I was really privileged to inherit a diverse set of individuals from the various companies that made up the technology team. And it was great, right? Everybody rolled their sleeves up, they dug in and just got things done. And so the key is to focus on the outcome and make sure that you take care of people. And I think that was very much what we did.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. And obviously, there's obviously a lot of people involved, right? So,
Oh, yeah.
and not everybody embraces change. Some people, they might not even want the merger to happen. How did you kind of, from a leadership perspective, how do you deal with personalities where they're slightly reluctant to it? How did you overcome it to make sure that they were on board?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're right. We as humans, we like to stay the course, so to speak, and people get into a mindset where they want to keep doing what they're doing, especially if they've been successful with it, right? So you can't just promote change for the sake of change. There was a really good mission statement by the leadership team about what they were trying to build. So to me, I think the name New Rocket is very appropriate because if you think about the era that humanity is now in, we're poised to go to the moon again, to Mars, all these things. It's a tangible way of creating a story and a business plan that the organization can believe in and be part of. That's not to say that there will be some things that people will not be exactly happy. Systems, be it the technology, be it the process or whatever. One thing you have to remember in any of these things, and I've done a number of these over my career, is you can't make everybody happy. And if you try to, you will fail. And most importantly, if you think about it, there's always a group of people that are probably reluctant, right? Doesn't mean you forget about them. Absolutely not. In fact, those can be your ambassadors, but you still need to focus on that 80 to 85% that want to do this, because that will be the core group of people that will help you achieve the objective. But again, be humble, listen a lot, and make sure that you're prepared to pivot. But in the end of the day, there will always be a group of people that are not able to, and you've got to obviously respect that and figure a way to help them be part of it. Or in some cases, sadly, sometimes people will move on.
That sounds amazing. And you kind of picked up on mindset there, and what you were saying, George. I mean, talking about yourself, personal self, can you describe the mindset or attitude that has been instrumental in your journey to the top? How did it develop? How do you maintain it as well? That's probably the biggest question.
For me, I had a wise teacher, and it was my father. And he always told me that your success is based and built upon the people that you work with. And to me, I've always viewed success as collective, and I viewed success and failure, by the way, because we do fail, and sometimes failure is good because it teaches you to do things differently, in the people that you work with or that work for you as you progress. I'd love to say I was like this when I was 21. I wasn't. As you get older, you get wiser, you do, and you also realize that you actually know a lot less. But the key to me is always listening. Within that core group of people that you work with, that work for you, or technology as a group, as a service delivery group to the business, right? You have to listen. You have to make sure that you're providing value, that you're solving real problems, and that you are able to deliver on what you do. And to me, I find that listening and encouraging people to make those decisions, and sometimes you have to arbitrate those decisions, right? Is the way to do it. So very much I credit what I've been able to achieve in my professional life because of the people that I've had the privilege of working with, and that have allowed me to progress and do the things that I've been able to do. So I think as a leader, you always have to listen. It's so critical.
Absolutely. And, I think listening is communication, listening are the most important sort of tools that anybody can have, in their back pocket. As much as obviously you're great at listening to your team and to the people around you, how do you get them to listen to you? How do you become an inspirational leader that they look up to you, respect what you say, and follow, your decision making? Like, how do you sort of flip it for the other side?
You know, not always will people listen to you. The key is to try to get them to grab onto something and then build on that, right? In one way or another, we always are in a position where the skeptics have to be convinced, and sometimes you don't. And begrudgingly, they'll follow. And what to me is the most rewarding is after you've done something where a skeptic said, "That's never going to work," or "This is a terrible idea," they come back and say, "This wasn't such a bad idea." And if they really, really want to stretch, they'll tell you that it actually was a good idea, and it tells you how it's helped them. Again, it's good to have naysayers. I'm a firm believer in naysayers because we don't all want to go over the cliff together, right? It's funny if I think about service management and all of those things that we do inside of service management. There's a reason why we do this. And this is something I give a lot of credit to the Brits. You guys developed the ITIL framework, right? Which ServiceNow is very much designed to leverage. And quite honestly, there's a reason why we do change requests, because we want to make sure that we're not going to go over the cliff and do something bad. And if someone says, George, don't do this, there's a reason why. Maybe they got burnt by something, and I want to hear why. And then you accept the risk, or you move forward and you make sure you acknowledge the contribution of the individual who might not have been in agreement with you.
Okay, brilliant. So when you joined New Rocket, was that your first introduction to ServiceNow, like the technology, or had you used it before?
I had used it before, so it was not my first introduction to ServiceNow. I've used it in 3 prior positions. A huge fan of ServiceNow. It's just a phenomenal product. And I'll tell you a little secret. I cut my teeth on Remedy many, many years ago in a on-prem environment on an AIX platform with Oracle as the database. There were a lot of things I learned about, and Remedy at the time was a great product. There's a lot of things you should do and shouldn't do. And unfortunately, we did most of the things we shouldn't do. When I first had a chance to use ServiceNow in a SaaS environment, I was running a healthcare products company. We built technology, and it was perfect, right? Because change control was massive. We were updating SaaS platforms, and frankly, we were not doing a good job. We were not. We were deploying buggy code and having a lot of service interruptions. So leveraging a tool like ServiceNow, which allows you to really run that change control, problem resolution, and everything, made a huge difference in our ability to improve the overall change control process and the ultimate outcome. And then we pivoted our customer support desk over to it as well, and had all of the incidents opened by customers on there. So fantastic. And then I deployed HR in a previous organization. And then, of course, at New Rocket, because we had so many, there's just phenomenal expertise, we just deployed the service desk, the hardware and software asset management, and all the other components. So, and did a whole bunch of different things with it. And if you go to New Rocket's website, you'll see what the company has actually been able to build on top of ServiceNow.
Oh, that's amazing. And comparing ServiceNow to perhaps some of the other competitors out there, would you always pick ServiceNow if you had choices at the top of what to implement?
As a rule, I would, only because it's such a comprehensive solution, especially in the enterprise space. Once you get to a certain point in size, there is the life cycle, not just of technology, but the people, right? You manage the onboarding, case management in HR, the asset disposition, and all the different things in there. If you can afford it, it is by far the best product to use in this space. It just is. And it's an investment, but I think it's a worthwhile investment.
Mm, absolutely. So no, that sounds fantastic. And for anybody that wants to, who's thinking about a career in ServiceNow, what do you think the future holds?
I think the future for anyone that wants to get involved with that platform, it's very good. This is a company that's growing tremendously. It is a low code, no code environment. So for those folks that cut their teeth, using Visual Cafe for Java or Visual Studio, it's very different. I would also recommend that they understand business processes. That to me is the most important thing because you're really automating and enabling the workflow of an organization's business, and understanding why you're doing something and why it's important. And also, there's an incredible reporting engine within ServiceNow as well for managing the KPIs and everything. But being a business-focused individual around process, I think, will help an awful lot.
Absolutely. And so how can somebody learn this? How can they, yeah.
Online. That's the beauty. And of course, you can also register at ServiceNow's platform, and get access to their learning material. They're invested in people learning the technology. The more people that know how to use the tool, obviously, the more people want to use the tool. This is very much if you want to put into it, you will get more than double the output in what you put in. So I would say to anyone, go out to the ServiceNow website and learn how to use the tools. The data is there. The materials are there.
Yeah, amazing. That's great. So just talking about obviously learning on your own 2 feet, what role do you believe mentorship and guidance plays in career progression?
A lot. I'm a big believer in that. To me, one of the most important things in any leadership role, especially in areas where you've got people that are younger or may not have the background in the technology, is stretching. I always say to the people that work for me, when we do their MBOs or whatever you do, is you got to have a couple in there where you feel like you've got to put yourself out of your comfort zone, right? And I think it's really important that people feel that they're supported if they go out on a limb. I always tell everybody that works for me, it's okay if you fail. Because if you don't fail, that means you haven't taken a risk. Obviously, there's some areas you have to be careful with, and you want to fail in areas it doesn't put the organization or people at jeopardy. But you learn by failing. So to me, encouraging that through mentorship, where the people that work for you are confident that if they do fail, it's not an extinction level event, but rather it's a growth opportunity.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that mindset that it just encourages people to kind of really go out there and explore and be curious and try new things. And I think, that's how humans advance, right? So I think that's brilliant. I think it's just natural human behavior that, people face moments of doubt, right? As a leader, you probably sat in a boardroom and at some stage probably had imposter syndrome, thinking, oh gosh, what am I doing here? How do you manage to overcome these self-doubts? What would you kind of give as advice to overcome feelings of like insecurity, that you are good enough and what you say does work? And what would you say to that?
I would say, number one, you're your own best champion for your abilities. So if you think about that, be proud of what you've done, but be humble about what you've achieved. Number two, if you don't know the answer, don't try to answer it. It is okay to say, I don't know. In fact, it shows a level of maturity that if you don't know the answer, it's okay to say that. Now, I preface that if you're supposed to know the answer in that board meeting, saying I don't know is probably not the best idea.
Yeah.
because that means you didn't prepare, and that's a whole different discussion. But if you truly don't know, if you said to me, well, what do you think the likelihood of this and this happening? And I hadn't prepared, I'm perfectly fine saying I don't know, but let me look and see and I'll get back to you, or something like that. So, there's a tendency, especially in technology, because things move so quickly, that people feel that they're on the spot. And if you're on the spot, you've got to know the answer. Well, there's a lot of answers that I have to take time and come back to. And so it's okay to admit that you don't know. And number three, personally, I find that in a difficult situation, validating that the people that you've spoken to have understood what you've sent to them, telegraphed, so to speak, it's important. If it's a complicated environment and the question is difficult, we as technological people tend to get into our jargon speak. So it's good to go back and say, all right, Farrah, did I answer your question? Does that make sense? And I think it shows a level of engagement where you're actually making sure that the question that was asked, the answer actually provides meaningful background to be able to move forward.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. Absolutely. And you mentioned about being able to say no. Okay, so there are many people out there that find it difficult to say no. Their managers are piling on the workload. There's a project. Can you do it in this deadline? Yeah, sure, I'll do it, even though they know they can't, but they physically can't say no. How would you educate those people to be able to stand up and say, actually, I can't, no, the answer is no. How would you teach somebody that?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, only because if you're in a situation where you can't possibly achieve something, yet there's a pressure to accept, then at some point the wheels are going to fall off, right? It's a matter of time. And that's a broader issue, and that could be a discussion about the corporate culture or whatever else. I always say to my staff, don't say yes if you know you shouldn't have said yes. It's okay to negotiate. No has to be a nuanced no. There are sometimes it's absolutely no, right? No. But there's always a no but, or there is a yes but. And a yes but is a way of saying, well, I think I can, but there's some constraints. And those constraints are, you've already got me at 120% of budget in terms of allocation. This is going to put me at 150%. How's that going to work? And very candidly, we all can exceed 100% for a short term. Can we do 150% for a long term? Probably not. So I think bringing visibility to the fact that you've asked to do something that is potentially unachievable and providing an opportunity to say, I want to do this, but maybe this could be moved over here, or we could defer this. So it's a negotiation, but you have to be comfortable negotiating. You do. And I think we as managers have to also ensure that people that work for us are comfortable asking to negotiate. Because otherwise it's a one-sided relationship. And one-sided relationships generally are not healthy.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, great advice there. And just talking about that, sometimes people do take on too much and they burn out very quickly, or the quality drops, right? So what advice would you give to somebody so that they don't burn out, so that the passion doesn't go from what they're doing, from what they initially joined to do?
If you've got someone that is working for you, or you see, if you've got the relationship, in a way, I would take them aside and say, look, George, I appreciate the passion, but I see the quality is slipping because you're doing too much. How can I help you? Do we need to do things differently? Or, do you need me to help you speak to your manager, or just dial things back? We all have a tremendous capacity to do things. I just love watching athletes give it their absolute everything. and just break that record or do anything. But that's a calculated move, and you'll notice most of those high performing athletes, they give their all at the right moment because they've learned how to do it. And teaching people how to operate that way, I think, is critical. But running people ragged forever, it's not sustainable, and you'll lose good people. And ultimately, it's a reflection on your leadership that if you do that, people don't want to work for you. So I pride myself on the fact that I really encourage all of the people that I work with to maintain a good work-life balance. That's really important.
Absolutely, 100%. And, talking about passion, people sometimes will join a project or a company and be really psyched up, really passionate. Yeah, this is what I do. 3 months, 6 months in, a year down the line, it starts to wane. How what advice would you give them or other leaders on how they can keep that fire alive in someone's belly, they keep that passion alive?
We all have our up days and we all have our down days. And I think, again, managing to those down days is really important, as you point out, because, there could be periods of time where it's just, oh my goodness, it's drudgery, right? Is it going to rain for another week? Can I just see the sun? I think the most important thing is maintaining a sense of positivity. I'm a positive person. I really am. I'm an optimist by nature. So maybe I've got an unfair advantage on that. But trying to maintain a positive approach to things. And if sometimes it looks like you're in a rut, then you got to shake it up. And shaking it up could be you just stop doing something and try something else to build a nugget of success that allows you to pivot back in. I always tell people, if you can't solve the problem by yourself in the first 30 minutes, chances are you won't. Go call a buddy. And if they can't do it in the next 30 minutes, then call another buddy. Because to me, you should never try to do this on your own.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. And just talking about, you mentioned positivity, obviously that is so crucial, motivation, positivity, it's so important in a work life, but also for personal life setting. How those people that perhaps maybe suffer from anxiety or overthinking or, have moments of self-doubt, what advice can you give them to have a positive mindset so they get into that flow?
We all suffer from anxiety. We do. And we all suffer from what I would call, bouts of self-doubt. And for some people, that could be even more serious. I think you recognize that, and you need to be good to yourself, and you need to have a support system whereby you are able to do that. And I recognize not everyone can do that. And that's, I'm very fortunate. I've been married for over 30 years, and, that's the most important person in my life. But, you have to recognize, and when people tell you, George, I see something and you need help, take them up on it. You're not Superman or Superwoman, right? We're all fallible. So I think listening and recognizing that hopefully the people that you're with have your best intentions at heart, and try to act on that. And don't consider that because maybe you need help, you're weak. I think that's so important. There's been a tremendous pivot in areas of what I would call mental health, where to admit that you needed help was maybe to be weak. And it's not. It's absolutely not. It is a recognition that you need help. After all, if you broke your arm, would you not go to the doctor? Of course not. You'd get it set, right? I mean, there's just no question about that. And that's the same thing. If you feel that you need help, ask.
That's honestly, that is absolute key, I think. And like you say, I think having that support network around you, inside work, outside work, it really can, it really builds the foundations, doesn't it? So
It does.
yeah, amazing. So, you're very humble, George. For someone who's achieved great things in your life and your career, how how do you balance ambition and humility? Like, how have you managed to stay so grounded and maintain humility, but being so successful?
Well, you're making me blush now. Um, again, I've been very fortunate that I have seen different parts of the world, different people. We are very fortunate. We, living in the UK, living in North America, having, the background to really live very, very blessed, if you will. I've been all over the world where I've seen people that do so much with so little. And I've got many memories of things that I've done, be it, in Africa or India or the Middle East. And many of those people were instructive in making sure that you don't forget the importance of the little things and be grateful for everything that you have. And, it could be just having a bottle of water or, just it could be the smallest little thing. But at the end of the day, I think if you remember that we all came from the same place, we all share the same wants for our families, for our children, and I think that keeps you grounded. And, just because you have a lot of things or you're able to do these things still doesn't mean that you've got to remember you're very fortunate. And that's what I try to focus on, is giving back and remembering that I am fortunate, and trying to hold that sort of near and dear.
Yeah, that's amazing advice. That's fantastic. So, yeah, brilliant. And obviously you have been very successful, throughout your career. What do you think are the key qualities that perhaps you've brought to the table that's allowed you to kind of go that one step further than perhaps others who were on the same level as you perhaps didn't?
Listening. That to me was the most important thing. The moment you stop talking, it changes the dynamic, because now you listen and you observe. And once you start observing and you actually listen to what people say, as opposed to wanting to say the next thing, it changes things for you and it allows you to look at the world in a different way. And I think that to me is the most important thing I would say to anyone, is take time to listen. It's not about the fact that you had the most amount of airtime or that you said the most. It's about listening to what people want, need, and what the problems are, and trying to be part of that solution.
It's amazing. Yeah, perfect. So, I think for the new generation, right? So the young people that are just joining the ServiceNow industry, or, the next gen community, what advice would you give to the young generation who are now kind of establishing themselves within ServiceNow? What advice would you kind of give them?
I would say you're at a point where it's very exciting, because to me, the blending of technology with things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, provides tremendous avenues that didn't exist 20, 30 years ago. But there's a couple of things I would say. Number one, a bad manual process will be a bad automated process. And what I mean by that is, take the time to understand what problem you're solving and make sure that the outcome actually is better than what you started with. Number two is understand what the business is trying to achieve. What is the organization trying to achieve? And number three, you can't expect it to be like sending an iMessage. It's not instant gratification. Good things take time. And it's okay if they take time. It's probably better that they do, because that means you've had an opportunity to look at various twists and turns.
It's fantastic. So wonderful. Looking back at your career, is there anything you wish you did differently?
That's a good question. I try not to be retrospective, because once you've made a decision, it's important that you stay the course. You know, are there things that in hindsight I would have done differently? Yes. But is there anything that I've done that I wish I hadn't have done? No. I am very happy to have done all the different things. And I think it's okay to look back, but you can't second guess yourself either. So, and once it's done, right? I mean, you know, you can't unring a bell. So you really need to just make the best out of it. As we say, you make lemonade out of lemons. So that might sound a little bit, how should I put it? Almost sanctimonious, but you can't undo what you did. If you did something wrong, obviously apologize, be humble, and learn from it. Learn from your mistakes, and always try to do better.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Are you the type of person that lives very much in the moment? Are you very much a now person, or are you always planning for the future?
Well, my spouse would say that I'm in the now, but you know, I think a little bit of both. Actually, you know, there's some areas where I plan a lot, and other areas I don't. So I just really think it depends on what you do. And I'd like to say you can't typecast me as someone that just picks up and is overly spontaneous. But I'm also have never been accused of being an over planner either.
Yeah.
So I'd like to say I'm a bit balanced, hopefully.
Yeah, amazing. Perfect. So, look, this could be totally non-work related. So let's pretend we're in Back to the Future. Okay. We can be Marty McFly, Doc Emmett. If you could go back in the DeLorean, in a time machine, and talk to your 21-year-old self, or give him something, what would that be?
Um, I would say don't be arrogant. That's what I would say. Um, when we're younger, we tend to be arrogant because we don't know any better. And um, it's a function of being younger, and it's okay. The key is to grow out of it, which I'm thankful that I have. You know, that's 36 years ago. So going back in that's more than, you know, that's over double my 21 years of age. So I would say that would be it. Don't be arrogant.
Yeah.
Um, I could think of something that's probably a little bit off color, but I'm not going to say it. But it's
Yeah.
but
No, that's fine. No, absolutely. I'm sure we could guess. You know, when you say don't be arrogant, you know, I think what young people probably think is they need to make a mark. They need to kind of stamp their ground, and they also need to exert confidence. Do you think arrogance and confidence could be mixed up, and where people think I'm being confident about my abilities, it's actually coming across as arrogant? What's the balance? What's the fine line?
there is a fine line, and you're absolutely right. Confidence is the fact that you are able, based on previous, you know, success or even previous efforts, that you feel like you can do something. Arrogant is where you've lost hubris, you've lost the ability to be objective, and that to me is part of that listening, right? Arrogance is not just, oh, I'm, you know, a sub, you know, whatever in terms of my track record or my swimming or whatever it is. There's always going to be someone that's better than you. No world record has stood the test of time. Some of them do stand for a long time, but at the end of the day, your record will be broken. And so at that point in time, you might be the best, but there's always someone that's going to be better. So to me, revel in what you've succeeded in, but always try to remember you're only here for a short amount of time.
Absolutely. I think that's a key thing, isn't it? You got to enjoy life, be humble, be kind, and you know, work hard. I suppose work hard, and you'll be successful, right?
Exactly.
Oh, that's
Exactly.
amazing. Perfect. Well, look, George, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. I thank you so much for your time, your wisdom. You know, your positivity is so infectious. And it's been amazing to talk to you. So thank you so much for joining us today.
It's been my pleasure, Farrah. Thank
Oh,
you.
brilliant. Thank you so much then.